Thanks, everyone. And thank you, and thanks to the organizers. And speaking of organizers, they asked me to submit a draft of my slides 3 weeks before today. And as you know, this field is moving so fast, so some of my slides might seem a little bit outdated, and I apologize in advance. So 2025 has been an incredible year for big, large, well, that's a, if that isn't a pleonasmus, right? For big LLM, we have GPT-5, we have Claude 3.7, 4, and 4.1. We have Grok and a heavy version of that, whatever that means. Gemini 2.5, DeepSeek R1, 3.1, whatever that means, and Kimi K2. So, but enough about that, and a bit more about something that I actually care about, myself. So I work at Adobe. I have a background in web development, and as you can tell from my computer, I'm a recovering Linux on the desktop user. So this talk is going to be, when it goes into technical detail, going to be specific about Macs and Apple, but that's only because it's my story. So if you prefer Linux or if you prefer Windows, then I'm really not sure if I can help you. Speaking of Windows, a wise man once said, never trust an abacus that you cannot throw out of a window. And that is very much the theme here. So, but first I must digress, and let's talk about how this story started. And if I remember correctly, then it all started with memory. And forgive me, this was a long time ago, because after playing a bit with ChatGPT's memory, I thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool, wouldn't it be awesome if Claude had the same kind of memory, right? And as you know, Claude now has memory, so this really happened a long time ago, maybe even months. And this is how I went down this particular rabbit hole. And the cool thing about memory is that there's an app for this, right? There's an app for this in the cloud, and what then happened can only be described through this picture, or it's all fun and games until somebody else's memories show up in your chats, right? So I'm not going to talk about which app in particular I've been using. I want to protect the innocence of the vibe coders. But my first reaction, seeing somebody else's memories being played back by Claude, was, oops, oh my God, what did I put in there? Right, because somebody else is now able to see it. And this reminded me of something that a grumpy sysadmin told me a while ago. The cloud is just somebody else's computer, right? And adjusted for the current period, this means the vibe-coded SaaS service is really just somebody else's unverified hallucinations. So I thought to myself, hey, I could do this. So, and this leads us back to the programmer's credo, right? We do these things not because they're easy. We do these things because, well, we thought they were easy when we started this. So I thought I could do this myself, right? Come on, a database that's really just a glorified notebook, an MCP server that's really just a glorified shell script, and a rack that's really just matrix multiplication and string concatenation, right? So how hard could it be? And I came just back from AI Engineers World Fair in San Francisco, and I thought, hey, that should be easy. I think I can do this. And a bit of irrational exuberance would be just on brand. So why don't we start with something simple and install LLM? And the tool works something like this, right? You can say LLM prompt, say hello to ADI engineer Paris audience in medieval French, and then, well, I can't read this because I don't even speak modern French. But you can also do things like generate an embedding, and you can list the available models, and you can see what the default model is. So GPT 4.0 Mini. Sorry, GPT 4.0 Mini. That's still somebody else's computer, right? So all I've done so far is I moved to a local client and didn't really win anything. So, and we know that OpenAI certainly won't store all my prompts and all my messages and steal all my memories, right? Unless a New York judge orders them to do exactly that. So let's go back to my first patron in this journey, Simon Willison. Right, so the LLM tool really became the Swiss Army knife for not just remote models, but also for local models. It's fantastic, and it's fantastic in how simple it is, right? Because it gives me the ability to start with the whole world of models without really having to dive too deep into it, at least in the beginning. And this reminds me to never trust a model that you can't run on a computer that you can't throw out of a window. And we're going to talk about the financial merits of throwing that kind of computer out of a window a bit later. But let's digress. In 2018, I quit Twitter. I found it horrible. There was so much politics content on it, and I couldn't even block the words Trump and Clinton. Just didn't work. So I deleted my account. Some guy called Kevin took over the username, and I've been told that the name Kevin has exactly the same ring in France as it has in Germany. So, and in 2025, I signed up for a fantastic new social network, which was apparently built by some AI enthusiasts. They even have an LLM built in. It's a great, fantastic place to learn about AI, as long as you can recognize the bots and the shills and the agenda pushers. So, and on this journey, I have to admit there was a bit of self-doubt, right? I'm not. Who am I to call myself a researcher? And especially, I'm not one with spare GPUs sitting around. And this brings me to my second patron, Count Tim of the Orchard, who is he's a bit of a ambiguous figure in this story, because he's ravaging my wallet, luring me to buy more and more hardware. My first computer was an Amiga 500, which cost $700. In today's money, that would be $2,000. That's still only half of what my Mac Studio cost. But so Count Tim managed to double the extraction rate. And then the second struggle was that laziness, right? Sloth. I thought, hey, maybe I could just wait for somebody else to build this. And I have to admit, thinking that is never a good way to start a side project, right? You want to do, and the thing about hobbies and side projects is, these are the things where you have permission to be bad, right? You have permission to do stupid things, and you have permission to learn. And that brings me to my next foes in this story, Lord Sam and Dario of the Enduring subscription. They are providing great services, right? But these great services come at the low cost of $200 per month each, and they enable this kind of complacency. My next challenge was Python, right? I've been using Python years ago, and I have, as a software engineer, developed a kind of snobbish attitude towards Python, right? Is it a real programming language? Isn't it kind of slow? And And this kind of arrogance is absolutely misplaced, right? Because first, you can just use LLM, right? And you don't have to know that there's Python underneath. You can just start with shell scripting. And that's a great way to get started. And then you run into performance issues, right? One of the things that LLM does when it's loading a model is it needs to take the model, read it from disk, load it in memory, and then start your prompt, right? And for even for models that fit onto your computer, that still takes time. So you want to speed this up, and you think, oh, wouldn't there be a way to keep this running in kind of a local server that stays in memory? And the crowd favorite for this is Ollama, which you can just install, serve it on port 11434. There's a huge model library and a great community. But one of the things is this is not really super optimized for macOS. Then another way to get started is with Yan.ai, which is essentially, it feels like a desktop application, but somewhere hidden in the settings is a way to start a server. Localhost 1337, oddly specific number. And it's a really good way to get started. But to be honest, my favorite for this is LM Studio. Right? It offers a great combination of the right performance because it has MLX embedded. MLX is Apple's framework for running machine learning or running LLM applications on Apple hardware. And one of the cool things about Apple hardware is that they have this unified memory, right? They have memory unified between that can be accessed by GPU and CPU. And if you're just looking at the cost per gigabyte, I don't want this. If you're just looking at the cost per gigabyte of GPU accessible memory, that actually is good bang for the buck. So LM Studio is my sweet spot, and I have to thank the LM Studio for making this possible, right? And solving this why is this so complicated moment, right? It has a user interface. It also has a very capable CLI, and most importantly, it has a solid API that is running on localhost that is fully compatible with the open API endpoints. And I've already mentioned MLX as being great value for money, right? And I think nobody would have ever believed to say something like this about Apple hardware. And one of the current limitations with MLX is that matrix multiplication is still slower than on comparable NVIDIA hardware. And I've heard that this is, at least in the new iPhones, this is being taken care of. So maybe Tim Apple is going to get another check from me next year. So let's see. There's also, I should point this out, there's a very bare bones way of running MLX models locally, which is MLX server. So it's built into the MLX framework, and you can just, right, as long as you have UV running, you can get it started, and that's running on localhost 8080. Very minimal, very fast. And I should point out that the MLX community is absolutely insane. And I'm grateful for that, right? Because anytime a model comes out, they are, and the model provider is not providing an MLX version. Within hours, they are providing something on Hugging Face, so you can play around with it. And if it's not yet supported in MLX, then it takes a couple of days before they're patching it, right, to support this. And this is something that I found extremely helpful and extremely powerful to get started. So you might ask, okay, what are the models that you're actually running, Lars? And the caveat here is that this is most likely the most utterly outdated section of the whole presentation by the time you watch the recording. And the first one is OpenAI, which has a 120 billion parameter open source model and 128 sorry, 128 is the number, is the amount of gigabytes that my Mac Studio has. So I can barely squeeze one more open Chrome tab into this, but I can run it, and it's a fantastic model, right? It's just a little bit too big for me. Then we have Qwen, and Qwen has, and actually that's not the, that's my day. It used to be my daily driver until this weekend when Qwen 3 Next came out, which is an even more compact mixture of experts model, right? And one of the things that is making this great is that you have a large number of base parameters, but at any given prompt, only a small subset of these parameters are activated, and that speeds the whole thing up. I also have nice words to say about GLM 4.5 Air, which is heavier and slower than Qwen, but it's also very capable and a great model. And that brings us to an interesting part of the map and an interesting part of the landscape, because the unspoken heroes of this story are these Chinese AI labs, right? We have Qwen, we have Kimi, we have Ernie, we have GLM. They're all pushing the envelope on open source. And if you want to run something locally, you probably are not going to get by without having Chinese models run on your machine. So, and from my perspective, this is really one of the areas where competition in LLM is the fiercest, right? For the big frontier models, we essentially have 3, 4, maybe 5 vendors that are going in this loop where Google is the best, and then Grok is the best, and then Claude is the best, and then we go back. And for these Chinese models, it's changing really day to day, and it's extremely hard to keep track of. So I should also give a quick shout out to Devstrel. This is a very capable local coding model, right? If you've already sunk $200 in your Cloud Code subscription, it's obviously not going to hold a candle against this, right? But as something that is free, that you can run locally, it's a perfect model for the size it offers. For my particular use, it's also super useful to always have an embedding model around. So on this end, I'm going back to Qwen, and right, and if I'm doing semantic search, if I want to build a memory system, then I need vectors, and this gets them delivered. There's one final dragon that we need to slay here, which is my home lab is at home, and as you can see, I'm not at home right now. So how do we solve connectivity? And we basically start with localhost, right? Great that these give us localhost, but localhost is isolated and it's insecure, right? And if we would negate one of these two, right? If it was isolated and secure, it would still be useless, and if it would be non-isolated and still insecure, that would be super scary. So we need to find a solution, and the easiest solution for this is to use Nginx. You can just brew install Nginx, and Nginx can do things like validate API keys, right? And this is really just a snippet, but it's actually a snippet of code that is running on my system in production. So I have a small shell script that allows me to create new tokens. So for every single application, I can create tokens, which means in case one of them gets hacked or compromised, I have to just rotate one of the tokens instead of going and have to remember every single place. And right, so this is how you can generate a new token, and that's it. So the second challenge here is that if you want to enable connectivity, right? Now we have a secure local host. We still need a public host name, right? And a lot of people here would reach for ngrok, right? Which is how I started in web development if I needed to show something that is running locally. Unfortunately, I found this extremely brittle, and on top of that, it costs money as a subscription. And as I've already pointed out multiple times, I'm absolutely willing to pay a lot of money for LLMs, but for that, So the next option are Cloudflare tunnels, and I'm familiar with them because I'm using Cloudflare for work. However, they're awesome, but they are so confusing. It's incredible. And I have the feeling every time I go back to them, they've changed their CLI interface, so I have to relearn everything. And a good indicator for this is that not even Claude can figure out what the right options are, and is going in loops. So what I ended up with is Tailscale. And Tailscale has two features. It's on the one hand, it gives you a mesh network. So you can take all of your devices, bring them together in a network. And on top of that, they have what is called Tailscale funnel. And this is basically taking a port. In this case, this is 8081, which is where Nginx is running. And then you can start curling this particular endpoint. And if you want to try it right now, don't know if anyone is running curl here on their phone, you can try it. Nginx is going to ask you for a token, which you don't have. So which leaves us in, well, not exactly in compatibility hell, but something that is very close to this, right? So one of the things that I found out is that if you try to build something like an MCP server for memories that you can plug in everywhere, you are suddenly going to face the weirdest compatibility issues. Things like things that work in Claude, they break in Z. Things that work in Z bring cursor to crash. Things like OpenAI wants every MCP server to have two functions. One is get and one is search. Qwen code, on the other hand, says you can use any tool name in your MCP tools except for the name search. Right, so getting that kind of, it's perfect, right? We're going to solve this over time, but in the meantime, we will need a couple of brave knights who are willing to take on the pain. So the end result for me was a GitHub project that is called Apple Notes Semantic Search. By the time of writing this, I had 204 memories in this. And this is something that I've actually been using in creating these particular slides. So let's see if we can get it in the demo. I have AI Gateway, which is the other project, which is basically the Nginx configuration and a couple of helper scripts for launching the MCP servers, stopping them, and issuing tokens. And then a bunch of other local MCP servers, one for Calibre integration so that I can have AI search the actual ebooks that I bought at some point and then ripped from Kindle. Memory search, ways to do system calls, or use system tools like IMCP. And the thing that I like most about these local MCP servers is that they're literally just shell scripts. Right? With Bash and JQ, you can go a really long way. That's one of the things I absolutely appreciate about the MCP standard. So where leaves this? Where are we here? So I would say the landscape is richer than ever, right? And I don't really have wisdom to share. All I can share is motivation. Right? The tools are there, the models are there, the community is great. You can just do things. And in this year, local LLMs are the fastest moving area in AI, some of the fiercest competition in the field. And you would be a fool to not to try this, right? And I think since the end of the Middle Ages, employment prospects for court jesters have gone down. So don't do this. How do you start? You start today with brew install LLM, LLM install LM Studio, and that's it. So the best AI home lab is the one that you actually use, and let's see what using this means. So I have Claude here. Wait, I'm going to do something crazy. Come on, Claude is. Wait. Do we have this? No. No, okay. You can see something. And hey, macOS. So where's the... This is Claude, and Claude is not responding. Perfect. Have I... Oh, that explains why. You know what? Let's take this. So, a prayer goes up to the demo gods.
Are you going to throw your computer by the window?
Somebody's here to catch it. This is a company issued computer. I fear that we are recording this, and if not, I have a colleague here to rat me out. So, what do you remember about my AI engineer Paris presentation? And here we go. And I didn't check if the tools are actually enabled. Oh yeah, I didn't enable the tools. Okay. So this, I have to say, this demo is probably the second worst live demo that you've seen this week.
Yeah.
So, and with that, I apologize for the demo. You can talk to me later, and I'm going to start this.
Thank you.
Thank you.